Hey friends, it's Sam and Hurley and welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be using my brand new release with Ranger and Spellbinders, and we're going to be going back to the basics to check out some heat emboss resist techniques. And throughout the video I share some of my favorite ink blending tips, watercolor tips, and so much more, so stay tuned. Before we get started, I wanted to let you know that everything I use is listed and linked down below the video, and using those links helps support me, so I really appreciate it. Alright, now without further ado, let's get into it. So to start off, I'm going to be using the Flowering Mandala Peel Apart background stamp. I really love this background stamp because it's got such a great detailed and intricate mandala design, and the inside portion peels apart so you can use that to create patterns on its own. I'm going to use this in my Misty stamping tool, so I've peeled out the foam insert so that the rubber stamp can fit, and then I'm going to place it hanging off the edge of my card. I find this grounds it and creates a beautiful card design, so I'll peel off the acetate and pick it up with the Misty stamp door. I'm going to then go in and stamp this down, and I'm using the Misty just to make sure that if I need to, I can stamp it several times and get the perfect positioning. I'm going to ink this up with some Versamark clear sticky ink because we're going to go in and do some heat embossing. So then I'll press that down and give it some good stamp impression. Alright, once that's complete, I can then go in with my clear heat embossing powder. In this instance, you can also use white. Because we're using white cardstock, we just want that nice bright resist. So the clear will work perfect in this instance. I also like clear because I find that it heats up a little bit smoother for me. Then I'll bring in my heat tool and melt this powder down until it's clear and shiny. And whenever you're heating embossing powder, you want to heat it enough until it turns clear and shiny or until it turns its shiny color. And then you want to stop because if you heat it too much, it can kind of sink into the cardstock and become unusable. Alright, now I'm going to go in and do my ink blending. I'm using my Sam and Hurley Create inks and my Dome and Foam blending tools to make sure I get a nice smooth blend. And I'm going to follow along with the design of the mandala. So I like to do this whenever I do backgrounds. Here I'm using red, orange, and yellow to create a nice blend. And I'm going to kind of follow the different sections of the mandala and add colors to those areas. This mandala stamp also has a matching stencil if you want to be more precise and exact with how you do your blending. But in this instance, I wanted the colors to kind of blend together and create a beautiful color mix. And my Sam and Hurley Create inks were designed to blend together really beautifully and seamlessly without any effort or harsh marks. And so I really love how these colors blended and mixed together to create new colors in between. Once I'm done blending that design out, I'm going to then go in with a paper towel or a rag and wipe off the surface. This is going to remove any excess ink from the embossing and bring it back to a nice bright white design. To finish off this card, I thought I would bring in the Butterfly Kisses stamp set. I love this one and all of those beautiful butterflies and florals inside the set. I thought this would work perfectly with this mandala stamp, so I'm going to take two of the butterflies from the set. Here I'm using the outline images, and I'm going to stamp them down onto my stark white cardstock using some VersaFine Clair ink. This is going to give me a great jet black outline. And then I'm going to go in, and since this ink takes a little bit longer to dry, I'm going to throw over a layer of clear heat embossing powder and heat set it until it turns clear and shiny. That will lock in the ink and make sure it's nice and dry, and it'll also give it a nice shiny finish. Now that that's finished, we can go in and color in the butterflies, and this is done super simply with some of the solid images from the stamp set. So in here, I've included images for the butterflies' bodies, and also their wings to color them in super easily without having to do watercolor if you don't want to. So you can see here, I started off with a lighter yellow color and rolled onto the edges a darker orange color to add some nice shading. Now if I want this color to be even more dark and intense, I can go back in with that same stamp, ink it up, and then realign it. And since the image is so solid, it's really easy to realign on top and build up that color to make it more intense if you want to. For the second butterfly, I went in with a lighter pink color and I rolled on the edges this darker red color, and then I'm going to stamp that right over top of the butterfly. And again, for this one, I wanted the color to be darker and more intense, so I'm going to go in a second time, line up that stamp, and stamp it down. To easily cut out these images, there's a coordinating die set that's available, which is super exciting, and I'm going to go in, find the matching dies, and tape them down using some mint tape. When you're lining these up, you just want to make sure you have an even white border all around the die, and that's going to ensure they cut out perfectly. Then I'll run this through my black Platinum 6 die cutting machine. I love the look of this new all black machine, and they cut out perfectly. And check out that really great even white border all the way around these butterflies. I absolutely love it, and those dies are a huge time saver. To adhere these down to the card, I'm using a little bit of liquid glue into the center of the butterflies, and I'll place those down, and that makes it so that the wings of the butterflies can kind of fold up and get a little bit of dimension. I think that mandala design works great alongside these butterflies. To finish it off, I'm going to find a sentiment from the Butterfly Kisses stamp set. I like to kind of take the clear sheet of the set and move it around until I find the perfect sentiment. Here I stamped down the sentiment that says fluttering by to say hi in some clear sticky Versamark ink onto a piece of black cardstock. Then I'll throw over a layer of white embossing powder and heat set that until it's nice and bright white. Then I'm going to go in with my Fiskars Spring Assist scissors and fussy cut right around the sentiment, and I just leave a little bit of a border around the sentiment. The reason why I fussy cut around it rather than leaving it on a rectangle is because I find it gives a more finished look and it's easily able to fit into a smaller area. So check out how that looks. I love this finished card, that beautiful background with the mandala and blending, and the butterflies are perfect on top, fluttering away. For the next card, I'm going to jump into the Candles Peel Apart background stamp. I love this one because you got those 3 rows of candles that are quite large, but this center row of candles peels apart, which makes it so much more versatile for pattern building, stamping in different colors, and creating lots of different techniques on your cards. But for today's card, I put the piece right back in the center, and we're going to use this just as a regular background stamp. In this case, I'm going to ink it up with some clear sticky Versamark ink again, because we're going to do some more heat embossing to create a resist. This time I'm going to stamp the background stamp face up on my surface. I place the cardstock right on top, and then I'll use some sort of pressure tool or just my fingers to rub across the back to make sure we get a nice even transfer. Then again, I'll throw over a layer of clear heat embossing powder. I love to pour a couple jars of heat embossing powder into a larger container like this. I learned it from Jennifer McGuire, but it makes kind of using your clear heat embossing powder a lot easier for these larger backgrounds. And then again, I'll bring in my heat tool and heat set this until it's nice and clear and shiny, and then we can go in with our coloring. To super easily color this in, I'm going to go in with the Candles Layering Stencil set. This one coordinates with the candles background stamp, and it lines up perfectly to easily color these in with ink blending, and it's such a huge time saver. To hold my background down and keep my stencils in place, I'm going to place it down onto a Scrapbookcom Clearly Amazing mat. This is a clear sticky mat, and then I'm going to place my stencil over top by lining it up with the background. Then all I need to do is place the sides of the stencil into that sticky mat, and it'll hold it in place perfectly while I'm doing my blending. Now when it comes to ink blending, I wanted to show several different options in today's video, so here I'm using blending brushes. I thought it would be cool to show the different application methods and how they really work. So when it comes to blending brushes, you can see that it takes a little bit longer to build up as much intense color as we really easily got with the sponges. But this can be a really great application method for somebody who struggles to get a really great smooth blend because they go on super smoothly with really nice faint edges. And because it has all those little bristles, it almost looks airbrushed and you really can't see any defining line, so you get a nice smooth blend in between colors. This can also be great for anybody who's super heavy-handed. Sometimes with the other tools, the color goes down super bold and bright right away. So if you're a fan of softer colors and lighter blends, this might be the way to go for you. Because it takes a lot more effort to blend up that solid color, a really light, airy blend is super easy to achieve with these. Now, if you want to build up more color, it's totally achievable. All you need to do is just layer up this color, and since it's translucent dye-based ink, with every layer that you add on top, it'll get darker and deeper and more rich of a saturated color. Here I used my Simon Hurley Create inks, and I blended together Clear Skies, Tropical Tango, and Overzealous to get this really beautiful, cool toned blend. Now, keeping the stencil on the surface, I'm going to go in with my paper towel and wipe off the embossing to get rid of any excess ink that's sitting on the surface. You want to do this when that stencil is still there so that it doesn't rub onto the white surface. Then I'm going to peel that stencil off, and you can see we got those really great colored candles, and none of the color is outside of the lines. It was so simple. Then I'm going in with stencil layer number 2, and you can see it's etched in the bottom right corner to make sure you have the orientation right of the stencil. Then I'm going to lay it over top of the candles, make sure it lines up, and then I'll tack it in place by using the edges of that sticky mat. Then I'm going to go in with more of my Simon Hurley Create inks and the blending brush to go in and simply blend these candles. Here I used a little bit of that bright shooting star yellow color, which I really love. And then I'm going to go in with a second tone. Here I used Guppy, and I'm just going to lightly blend this in coming up from the bottom edge of the candle. And this will make the bottom edge of those flames just a little bit darker, giving it a little bit of depth and dimension, which I love to do. Once that's complete, I'm going to again keep the stencil on to make sure my white cardstock is protected and wipe it off with a paper towel to make sure any excess ink is off of the embossing. To remove it from the sticky mat, I'm going to roll it backwards like that so that it doesn't warp the cardstock, and it comes off perfectly, and there we have that beautiful background. I love how simple it is to color in those candles with just those stencils, and it saves so much time. To clean off the sticky mat with any ink, I'm going to spray down some water, and then I'm going to take a paper towel or lint-free cloth and gently wipe over top of the surface. This is going to remove any water-based inks like mine, and then you'll leave it to air dry and all the stickiness will come right back. Then I'll place it over the acetate so that it's ready to go for the next use. Then for the card base, I've cut a piece of teal cardstock to 4 1/4 inches by 11, and I'm going to score it at 5 1/2 to create a top folding card. Then I'll crease it down using my Teflon bone folder, and that just ensures it gets a nice crease and doesn't leave a mark. Then I'll adhere down the beautiful background we've created, and to finish off the card with a sentiment, I'm going to go into the Birthday Basics stamp set. I love this one. It's got big, bold sentiments you can use on the front of your card, and also these really great large and graphic images that are perfect for any birthday cards. I wanted to use this cake at first, but then I decided I didn't want to cover up the candles fully, so I'm going to again line up the perfect sentiment, and here I just went with the big and bold happy birthday. I love this stamp set again because those large sentiments are perfect for finishing off a card and really acting as the focal point since they're so large. Here I stamped down the happy birthday on that same teal colored cardstock, and I'm going to heat emboss it with white heat embossing powder to get a nice bright white shine. Again, I'm going in with my Fiskars Spring Assist scissors to fussy cut this out. You guys know that I don't love to leave it on a rectangle. If you want to, you totally can, but I find that cutting it down gives it a more finished look and makes it so that more of our background shines instead of the cardstock around our sentiment. I've added the sentiment down in the center using some foam tape, and there we have our finished card. A super simple birthday card coming together with the background stamp and the coordinating stencil to get some really great and easy coloring, and finishing it off with that Birthday Basics sentiment. I love how it turned out. For this last card, I'm starting off with the Moroccan background stamp. I really love this one. It's got a great geometric look to it, and it's super bold, and I think it's going to be a great stamp for adding texture in the backgrounds that I'll use over and over in my collection. So again with this one, I'm going to do some heat embossing. So I'm going to ink it up with some clear sticky Versamark ink, again facing upwards. This is how I stamp most of my background stamps, unless if I want them to have a specific placement. So with this, I'm going to place my cardstock right into it, use my pressure tool to make sure it stamps perfectly again, and then I'll throw over a layer of clear heat embossing powder, and again, heat set this until it's clear and shiny. It's a pretty repetitive process, but I just love how these clear heat embossed backgrounds look. It gives such great contrast with the white against whatever color we add to it. Then to do my blending, I went back to the foam domed blending tools because I want to apply lots of rich and saturated color really quickly for this background. So here I'm using a couple of different Simon Hurley Create colors. This is one of my favorite blends of colors right now. It is Crown Me, Bee Sting, Guppy, and Shooting Star, and it's this really great, rich, warm color blend. These colors just really blend seamlessly and beautifully together. I love the colors they create in between too. Now I also wanted to mention that the Simon Hurley Create inks are designed to blend. So even when using the domed foam blending tools, where you might sometimes get harsh marks with other inks, you really don't with these. They blend super easily, and you can even see I left some white along the edge, and there was no harsh marks blending it out to that white color. Then I'm going to go in with my paper towel again, and I'm just going to lightly buff off the surface, and you can see it brings it back to a really nice bright white color. I love that about the embossing. To finish off this card, I wanted to bring in the Succulent stamp set for a nice focal point. I love these succulent images. I think they pair great with that Moroccan background, and they have the outline and solid images. So again, these are going to be really great for easy coloring. I'm going to stamp down these images again using the VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink, and I'm stamping them down on Simon Hurley Create Stark White cardstock. It's the cardstock I've been using this whole video, so it's great at blending, and you'll see in a second, it's super great for watercolor too. So then I'm going to throw over a layer of clear heat embossing powder, again to set the black ink, but also because when the clear heat embossing powder melts, it's going to create a little wall so that none of the watercolor will bleed and escape outside of the lines of your images. So it's a really helpful tip when you want to watercolor. So for coloring in the tops of these succulents, I'm going to keep it super simple. I'm just going in with several different colors of green, and for each one of the succulents, I have the top succulent portion in a solid image on the stamp set. So this makes it super easy for coloring, just like we did the butterflies. I'm going to take 2 different colors of greens for each succulent, a lighter green and a darker green, and then I'll roll on the darker color to add some shading. Now if I want them to be even more solid or more vibrant, again, it's super easy to just ink the stamp and line it up since it's so nice and solid to make sure that it stamps super evenly and helps build up that color. Then I'm going to go in and do some watercoloring. For this, I'm going to take some of my Simon Hurley Create ink pads, and I'm going to smoosh them down onto my craft sheet to create sort of a palette of color. Then when it comes to watercoloring, I want to share some of my favorite tips that have really helped me get great results. First off, I always start off by going in with a layer of water. This is going to get the cardstock ready to take the actual color, and it's also going to help the color blend smoothly on the surface. So you can see here when we add that lighter brown color, it's able to easily blend and be nice and smooth, rather than just sinking into the surface and not budging whatsoever. Then for the second layer, I go in with a darker color and less water, and I'll add my shadow. Here I decided to just follow the lines of the stamp to add in different colors on the pot. Now for the second one, again, I added a layer of water first, then I'm going to go in with a light wash of gray, and then I'll go in with a darker gray color and less water and add it to one edge of the pot to create a little bit of depth and shadow. Then to blend those two colors together, I added a little bit of water and it helped smooth those out. Lastly, for this pot, I added the water down and then a lighter blue color. And then again, I'm going in with less water and that same blue color. So this is going to make the blue darker since we added less water, and I'll add it into the design areas on there. Now once those succulents are all colored and dry, I'm going to go in with the coordinating succulents die set, and we're going to be able to quickly and easily cut these out. What I love about this is I just find the coordinated die that matches up, I'll lay it over top of the stamped image, making sure there's an even white border all the way around the image, and then I'll tape it down with mint tape to hold it in place while we run it through our die cutting machine. This is such a big time saver, especially since these succulents have some littler details around the edges of them, so it makes it super easy to get a great cut. Again, I'll run it through my black new Platinum 6 die cutting machine to make sure they're all cut out, and then we can pop them out. And you can see those are super easy, and they got a nice white border all the way around. I'll place that center one down straight onto the card, and then I'll pop the other two right next to it on some foam tape to give it some depth and dimension and some layering on the card. Now I'll tell you what's really awesome about this die set. It also has this Hugs word die and shadow that goes along in the set, because there was extra room when we were manufacturing, and I want to give you guys the best value for your money. So I'm going to cut out the Hugs shadow out of white cardstock and the Hugs word die out of black cardstock, and we'll layer those together to create a really great dimensional sentiment. I love this hug sentiment because I send out a lot of cards that say hugs, and I thought it was funny to go along with the cactuses. Wait. The plural of cactuses is cacti, so to go along with the cacti. Then I'm going to adhere down these little letters individually using a tweezers and some liquid glue, and then we can add it right down onto the card with some foam tape. And that finishes it off beautifully. I hope you guys really love how this card turned out. I love the bright colors in the background with that Moroccan bold stamp, and the cacti on top, I got it right this time, look really great. Alright you guys, I hope you really enjoyed today's video. Leave me a comment down below letting me know which card was your favorite. I always love chatting with you guys down there. And remember, all the supplies are listed and linked down below the video so you can find everything, and using those links helps support me, so I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for stopping by, and I'll see you guys soon. Have a great day. Bye!